The chamber was a sphere of living light, 100 meters wide, its surface shifting like molten glass. Every breath shimmered, every motion echoed in the faint hum of the ship's gravity generators. Commander Elias Kerr drifted through that zero-gravity expanse, his body guided only by subtle pulses from his wrist thrusters. Opposite him, suspended like a vision from another realm, was the Empress of the Kelry Dominion, Treva. Her skin caught the ambient light and scattered it into spectrums no human eyes were meant to perceive. Even through the polarized visor of his suit, Elias found her almost too radiant to look at directly. They were supposed to be practicing cultural exchange protocols, non-lethal movement drills meant to study coordination between species. But every encounter with her had long since strayed beyond that. Her laughter, soft and resonant, seemed to vibrate through the ship's hull. She circled him lazily, her motion precise, feline, deliberate. When she spoke, her voice carried an undertone, a harmonic vibration that made the air around him feel heavier. "You're hesitating again," she said, her words curling through the calm channel. "You can't afford to hesitate in Kelry motion combat." Elias smirked, pushing gently off an invisible current. "That's because you cheat. I swear your moves bend physics." "I am physics," she said, and then smiled. A pulse of silver light rippled from her palm, and the ship's artificial gravity flickered. For a heartbeat, Elias felt the distinct tug of two different gravities pulling at him, one from the ship, one from her. He twisted midair, his trajectory intersecting with hers. They collided gently, bodies spinning, eyes locking in the blue haze between reality and something else. Her pupils, shaped like twin shards of night, reflected his own astonishment back at him. The hum around them deepened. The monitoring drones circling the chamber began to malfunction, their lights stuttering into fractal patterns. Elias noticed the shift immediately. He reached for the communicator on his wrist. "Control, are you seeing this? We've got..." But the channel dissolved into static. The ship wasn't responding. Only her voice remained clear. "Don't," Treva whispered. "Let it happen." Elias hesitated, caught between duty and the strange gravity in her words. Around them, droplets of light drifted, tiny particles from the energy field, shimmering like dust in sunlight. They gathered in spirals, forming invisible lines between them, mapping an unseen pattern in the air. He reached out, brushing one. It vibrated with warmth, alive. "What is this?" he asked. "Resonance," she said, her tone lower now, reverent. "You feel it, don't you?" He didn't answer. But he did feel it, a vibration beneath his skin, not pain, not electricity, but something deeper, something primal. It was as if the universe itself was breathing through them both. Treva drifted closer, her presence impossible to ignore. The air seemed to bend around her, light curving slightly in defiance of geometry. Her people were rumored to manipulate gravity fields instinctively, their emotions tied to the forces that shaped worlds. Elias had read the briefings, the research, the warnings, but none of that prepared him for the living reality before him. "You humans," she said softly, her words like a current through his chest, "always mistake attraction for danger. Maybe that's because it usually is." Her laugh was low, melodic. "And yet you keep coming closer." He hadn't realized it until then, but his gloved hand was already inches from hers. The faint glow of her skin pulsed in sync with his heartbeat, or perhaps his heart had simply surrendered to her rhythm. His breath caught. Somewhere beyond the chamber walls, alarms flickered on the bridge. Power fluctuations rippled through the eclipsora. The engineers would blame a calibration fault, a magnetic surge, anything but what was actually happening. Two beings entangling reality itself through emotion. She touched his hand. The world folded inward. His vision fractured into wavelengths, colors he'd never known existed. He could see the particles of his own body vibrating, the molecular dance that made him human. And in that brief infinity, he saw her, not her body, not her form, but the sheer immensity of her consciousness, stretching across centuries, holding empires in her wake. Then it was gone. The chamber snapped back to stillness. The hum receded. The alarms silenced themselves. Only the faint afterimage of her touch lingered in his mind, like starlight long after the star has died. Elias drifted backward, gasping. "What did you do?" Her expression softened. "I didn't mean to." "You opened something." "I didn't." "You did," she interrupted gently, her gaze unreadable. "You felt it too. Don't deny it." He wanted to. He wanted to call it interference, resonance distortion, anything with a name he could file in a report. But no science could explain the warmth still pulsing through him, the faint hum under his ribs that seemed to echo her heartbeat. The doors to the chamber hissed open. A technician's voice echoed faintly through the intercom. "Commander Kerr, Empress Treva, are you all right? We detected a major flux in the gravity field, nearly destabilized the whole deck." Elias looked back at her, still floating weightless, still radiant and calm. "Guess we overdid the exercise," he said, forcing a grin. The Empress smiled in that slow, knowing way that made him forget where he was. "Careful," she said, drifting closer once more, her tone playful and ancient at once. "You're falling for me." Elias laughed, though it came out shakier than he intended. "I'll take my chances." And then, as the technicians hurried to restore stability, as the ship's lights flickered back to their normal hue, Treva leaned close enough that her words brushed against his thoughts more than his ears. "Too late," she whispered. The hum returned, soft, almost imperceptible, but now it didn't come from the ship. It came from them. The days after the incident in the zero-gravity chamber passed like a slow unraveling dream. The Eclipsera continued its orbit over Verelion Prime, a giant of storm and lightning below, yet the ship itself no longer felt stable. Its lights flickered unpredictably, its engines hummed with a faint oscillation that no engineer could identify. The crew whispered of resonance faults, subspace interference, or magnetic storms from the planet's upper atmosphere, but Elias knew better. He could feel it in his body, in his pulse, in the way his own thoughts seemed to echo faintly with hers. Every time the ship drifted into the planet's shadow, he felt her presence more acutely. Not just when she was near, but even when she was elsewhere, on her deck, in her quarters, perhaps even in another world. The hum had taken residence in him, a vibration that seemed to sync with his heartbeat. He hadn't told anyone. How could he explain that the Empress's touch still resonated through him, altering his sense of time, of weight, of being? He saw her again during a diplomatic briefing, one held in the crystalline observation dome at the top of the ship. Stars shimmered above them, magnified through the translucent hull, and the auroras of Verelion Prime painted their faces in hues of violet and gold. Treva sat across from him, her posture regal, her gaze steady. Around them, officers and envoys spoke of treaties, of shared technology, of cautious trust. But Elias barely heard them. Every time her eyes flicked toward him, he felt the pull, a gravitational tug that bent his focus entirely toward her. When the meeting adjourned, he lingered behind, pretending to review his notes. She approached soundlessly, though her presence was unmistakable. "You've been avoiding me," she said. "I've been busy," he lied, though his voice betrayed him. Treva tilted her head, and faint patterns of light shimmered across her skin. "You felt it, haven't you? The connection." He exhaled sharply. "I don't know what I've felt. All I know is the ship's been behaving strangely since our training session, and no one can explain it." "They can't," she said softly. "Because it's not a mechanical fault. It's us." Her words hung in the air, vibrating with quiet certainty. Elias turned away, looking out toward the planet below. "You're saying we caused all this?" "I'm saying that resonance is not a metaphor," she replied. "For my kind, emotion is a form of energy. Our bodies generate it, channel it, shape it. When I touched you, when your mind opened to mine, it created a bridge. That bridge hums through every atom aboard this vessel. He shook his head, trying to ground himself in logic. That's not possible. Energy can't. Energy can do anything if the right hearts align, she interrupted, stepping closer. Your people call it quantum entanglement. Ours call it fate. Her proximity was dangerous. The hum in his chest deepened. He could feel his own heartbeat syncing with hers again, the rhythm merging until he couldn't tell which pulse was his. His breath came unsteady. What happens if this resonance keeps growing? He asked. Her expression darkened. Then we stop being separate things. He stared at her, half in awe, half in dread. And what happens to the ship? The ship will adapt, she said, though even she sounded uncertain. Matter bends to the stronger field. It always has. As if on cue, the Eclipsera shuddered. The lights flickered again, but this time the flicker followed the cadence of their breathing. The glass of the observation dome rippled slightly, like liquid reacting to invisible waves. A few officers looked up, confused, but the tremor passed as quickly as it came. Elias looked at her in alarm. You said this could be controlled. I said it could be understood, Treva corrected gently. Control is a human illusion. He wanted to argue, to demand a way to stop it, but his voice faltered as her hand brushed the air near his. The vibration surged again, soft but undeniable, as if the entire ship sighed in response. That night, he didn't sleep. The hum followed him even into his dreams. He saw flashes, her eyes filled with nebulae, her laughter tearing through the silence of deep space, her hand reaching through light. When he woke, the lights in his quarters were pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. His instruments showed no anomaly, yet everything felt alive, sentient. He caught his reflection in the mirror and saw faint streaks of light under his skin, barely visible, like threads of alien bioluminescence. He touched one of the glowing veins, half convinced it was an illusion. It pulsed in reply. By the next rotation, rumors had begun spreading among the crew. Some claimed the Empress's presence was causing fluctuations in the ship's power grid. Others whispered that she was testing human endurance with psychic interference. None of them suspected the truth, that the ship itself had become a living field of shared emotion between two beings who were never meant to connect. Elias found her again in the observation dome, this time alone. She was standing at the glass, watching the red storms below. He hesitated at the threshold, but she spoke before he could announce himself. You're changing, she said. I can see it in the way light bends around you. Then tell me how to stop it. Her gaze met his, serene and sorrowful. You can't stop gravity once it begins to fall. He took a step closer. What are you saying, Treva? That we've crossed the event horizon, she murmured. The resonance has bonded. You and I are no longer entirely apart. Every thought, every heartbeat, every feeling will feed the field between us. And the universe, she glanced toward the storming planet, the universe will listen. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum filled the silence again, subtle but immense, like the background vibration of creation itself. Then, with a faint smile that carried both warning and promise, she whispered the words that would haunt him long after the stars had shifted. Be careful, Elias. You're still falling. He looked back at her, his voice steady but quiet. Maybe I stopped trying to resist. Her eyes gleamed like collapsing stars. Then, Commander, it's already too late. And with that, the ship's sensors flared, recording a surge of unknown energy spreading outward in invisible waves, two heartbeats pulsing in perfect unison, rewriting the physics of everything around them. The Kelry dreadnought Valeran loomed in orbit like a moon forged from shadow. Its hull was a living alloy, pulsing with veins of molten light that changed color with the Empress's mood. Within its crystalline core, where gravity itself bowed to her will, Treva stood before the conclave. 12 Kelry elders encircled her, their translucent forms refracting light into fractal halos. Their voices wove together, a chord of disapproval vibrating through the chamber's atmosphere. You have violated sacred law, intoned the high resonant, her voice layered in harmonics that carried both words and emotion. You have entwined with an outsider, a transient being whose resonance could destabilize the Dominion. Treva's gaze was calm, but her hands clasped behind her back betrayed the faint tremor of restraint. The human was not chosen. The bond manifested. It cannot be undone. Then sever it, another elder hissed. Before it consumes you. Severing would destroy him, Treva replied softly. And likely unravel this sector's quantum fabric. Our energies are interlocked beyond cellular depth. We are entangled at the sub-reality level. Murmurs rippled through the council. Even among the Kelri, who had long transcended biological limitation, such fusion was unthinkable. To bond one's essence to another species was to blur the integrity of the self. Yet here stood their Empress, radiant and unyielding, carrying inside her the hum of a human heart. You speak of this as though it were divine, said the high resonant. But this resonance is infection. Containment protocols must be enacted. Treva turned her gaze toward the vast void visible through the chamber's living glass. Containment is the illusion of the fearful. What we share is evolution. Humanity is young, yes, but it carries a spark the Dominion has forgotten. The council fell silent, for her tone carried a quiet authority that made the very molecules pause. She had ruled for nearly 4 centuries by strength and insight, and though her defiance bordered on heresy, none dared interrupt her again. Meanwhile, far across the system, aboard the Eclipsera, Elias awoke to a sound that was not sound at all. The hum had deepened overnight into something rhythmic, almost musical. His quarters glowed faintly, the lights responding to his heartbeat. The ship's AI, Siren, flickered into existence beside his bed, its holographic form wavering with static. Commander Kerr, it said in its clipped neutral tone, biometric scans indicate elevated synaptic activity. Your neural patterns are synchronizing with an unidentified waveform. Elias rubbed his temples. Yeah, I can feel that. Correction, Siren replied, you are that. The waveform is emanating from your cellular structure. Shall I alert medical? He shook his head. No. Just, run diagnostics quietly. And keep this between us. Understood, said the AI, though a pause in its processing hum suggested hesitation. Commander, I must note, ship-wide power fluctuations have increased by 20% since your encounter with the Empress. Elias stood, staring at the faint tendrils of light now coiling under his skin. Yeah, he murmured, I think we're past coincidence. By the time he reached the command deck, reports were piling in. Instruments showed space-time distortions rippling outward from the ship's trajectory. Small objects, debris, satellites, even light itself, bent slightly toward the Eclipsera as though drawn by invisible gravity. The crew was unsettled but still unaware of the true source. Commander, said Lieutenant Vale, glancing up from the sensor array, whatever's causing these distortions, it's alive. We're reading biological signatures in the energy field. Elias's throat tightened. Biological? Yes, sir. 2 distinct frequencies. One matches your biometrics. The second frequency, he knew, needed no identification. He could feel her presence across the void, as clearly as if she were standing behind him. His vision flickered for an instant, the bridge melting into a swirl of stars and gold, and in that shimmer, he saw her. Treva's face appeared not as a hologram or a transmission, but within his own perception. Her thoughts flowed through his mind like soft currents of light. Elias, her voice whispered inside him, they know. The conclave demands separation. They will come for you. He steadied himself against the console. Let them come. I'm not running. You don't understand, she replied, her mental tone laced with sorrow. The bond threatens their control. They will erase you to preserve their laws. He felt the echo of her emotion, fear, guilt, something deeper that transcended language. He could taste starlight in his mind, could feel her heartbeat vibrating through the hull of his ship though she was millions of kilometers away. "Commander?" Vale's voice cut through the haze. "Are you all right?" Elias blinked, the vision fading. "Fine," he lied. "Just fatigue." But the hum in the air betrayed him. It had grown louder, resonating through the metal around them. The crew exchanged nervous glances as consoles flickered, the ship responding not to commands but to emotion. Across space, Treva stood before the Conclave's judgment. "If you destroy him," she said, her voice trembling with fury barely contained, "you destroy me as well. Is that what you wish? The death of your Empress? You were our Empress," the high resonant intoned. "Now, you are anomaly." The chamber filled with a rising vibration, the sound of collective power focusing on her. The Kelri elders were merging their energies into a containment lattice. The air glowed with sharp crystalline light. Treva closed her eyes, feeling the weight of centuries pressing upon her. "Elias," she whispered across the void, her thoughts trembling through the resonance, "they're trying to break the connection. If they succeed..." Her message fractured into static. Elias's monitors exploded with light. Every system on the Eclipsera spiked to overload. The hum became a roar, a harmonic storm that made the metal scream. He fell to his knees, clutching his head as her voice echoed through him, fading like the last breath of a dying star. Then, silence. For one heartbeat, the ship hung still, as if the universe itself had stopped to listen. Then, from deep within the hull, something vast awakened, a new pulse, brighter, stronger, synchronized to both of them. The resonance had not been broken. It had evolved. And far away, aboard the dreadnought, Treva opened her eyes to find the conclave chamber empty, the walls scorched with the imprint of her defiance. She looked into the void, a slow smile forming. "They tried to sever gravity," she whispered. "But gravity never asks permission to fall." The first shots were not expected. Across the outer sectors, Kelri fleets moved with precision, their vessels slicing through subspace like blades of living metal. The Human Federation, observing the fluctuations of the Eclipsera's energy signature, had already scrambled interceptors, convinced some new weapon was being tested. And in the center of it all, Elias and Treva were neither weapon nor test, they were the source. The Eclipsera shuddered as laser fire lanced across the void, striking the outer hull with bursts that left shimmering scars of plasma. Elias gripped the command rail, trying to coordinate evasive maneuvers, but the ship responded sluggishly. Not to piloting, but to the undulating field that now wrapped around it, his own pulse and hers acting like an unseen hand on the helm. Every evasive tilt of the ship seemed to require compromise, negotiation, as though the vessel itself were learning the rules of this bond. "Evasive patterns Delta 3, he barked. "Now." The AI, Siren, hesitated. Its projection wavered. "Commander, the ship's systems are operating outside design parameters. Thrusters are partially synchronized to the resonance field. Calculating maneuvers may result in..." "I don't care," he snapped, forcing his body to move in zero gravity with thruster bursts, manually guiding critical adjustments. "We are not dying here." The bridge doors slid open, and Treva floated in, radiant and composed. Her presence alone caused the instruments to flicker in recognition. "You cannot outpace them," she said, her tone calm, almost detached. "But you can outmaneuver them in ways they cannot predict." "Like what?" Elias asked, his voice tight with tension. "Follow me." She raised a hand, and the air shimmered. A wave of her energy rippled through the ship's hull. The field around the Eclipsera responded, bending light, warping space just enough to make the pursuers hesitate. Stars twisted in miniature arcs outside the viewport, giving the illusion of multiple ships where there was only one. The Kelri fleet hesitated, confused by what seemed to be duplication, until one vessel overcommit and slammed into the gravitational distortion, scattering in fragments that glimmered and vanished. Elias felt the tug of her energy through him, a magnetic force that hummed against his bones. You're doing this, what is it? Guiding, she said simply. Not controlling. You must still decide your path. It became clear to him that this was not a battle of firepower but of synchronicity. Every turn they made together, every coordinated pulse of their combined resonance, could alter the physical laws in the immediate sector. The chase became a ballet of warped physics, light bending unnaturally, projectiles curving mid-flight, gravity wells opening and closing like the beating of a heart. Even so, the attacks intensified. Federation interceptors adapted, focusing on countermeasures that could disrupt the resonance field. But the closer Elias felt to Treva, the more intuitive the synchronization became. He instinctively anticipated the twists of space, riding the distortions she created as though they were part of his own body. Then came the anomaly. A rogue particle storm, unnoticed in the initial scans, collided with the field. Plasma arcs danced unpredictably, scrambling sensors. Elias was thrown against the bridge wall, but Treva reached out, her hand brushing his shoulder. The field pulsed, stabilizing around them like a cocoon. Hold on, she whispered. The words were a caress in his mind, tangible in the vibrations coursing through the metal. Through the viewport, he watched as the plasma storm warped into a ribbon of radiant energy, bending around their vessel rather than tearing through it. They moved as one, each shift of the ship synchronized with the rhythm of her pulse and his own. The fleet pursuing them faltered, unable to track a target that no longer moved in conventional space. Yet, amidst the chaos, Elias sensed something darker. The resonance had grown, and with growth came vulnerability. Every time they aligned, the field expanded beyond the ship, touching nearby objects. Minor asteroids shifted orbit. Communications arrays in distant colonies registered inexplicable surges. Even remote sensors detected fleeting distortions in time, brief echoes of future events. Treva, he said, voice tight with concern, we can't keep pushing it. At some point, the field, whatever it is, will break containment. She studied him, her expression unreadable but serious. Then we must decide what we are willing to sacrifice. He swallowed hard. Sacrifice? Her eyes glimmered like distant stars. The field grows with our bond. It cannot be limited without cost. The question is whether we sever it to preserve order or let it evolve to its full potential, and risk everything around us. Elias's chest tightened. Everything? She nodded, slowly, almost mournfully. Worlds, fleets, maybe even the stability of this sector. But also, life as we know it could be reborn in ways unimaginable. The ship's lights flickered again, synchronized with the pulsing of their combined resonance. The hum now was a constant roar, vibrating through the hull, their bones, their hearts. He could feel the tug of entire fleets, entire planets, bending faintly toward them. And he knew, with an instinct that terrified him, that nothing could turn back time. Then we move forward, he said, finally. Together. She reached for his hand, and the moment their fingers touched, the Eclipsora surged forward like a living thing. The stars outside stretched and folded, the pursuing fleet scattering like dust in a hurricane of energy. The universe had begun to notice them. The first warning came in the form of a tremor that ran through space itself. Sensors aboard the Eclipsora recorded a fluctuation unlike any natural phenomenon. The stars seemed to pulse, not with light, but with resonance. An echo of their bond that stretched across the void. Elias stood at the bridge viewport, gripping the rail as the cosmos seemed to ripple outward from them, each wave vibrating with the same rhythm as their joint hearts. Treva floated beside him, her presence calm, radiant, yet imbued with the same tension he felt coiling in his chest. It's growing faster than I anticipated, she murmured. Not just here, but everywhere. Our connection, it's awakening something. Awakening what? He asked, eyes scanning the swirling distortions in the distance. Light bent in impossible arcs, and nearby asteroids spun off their trajectories, pulled by invisible currents. Her gaze was distant, almost introspective. The resonance field was never meant to be wielded. It is a force of creation, and a force of collapse. The more we give to it, the stronger it becomes. We are not merely connected, we are catalysts. The warning lights flared. Across the system, fleets that had once pursued them now scattered in chaos, as if their own ship sensed the gravitational hum radiating from the eclipsera. Communications channels went dead, electronic signals warped, and automated systems shut down as the energy expanded outward in pulses. Elias realized with a rising panic that the field had begun to interact with the very fabric of subspace. Siren's holographic projection flickered beside him, the AI's tone tight. "Commander, the resonance is exceeding all containment thresholds. Structural integrity of the hull is stable only due to active compensation. Any further amplification could destabilize local spacetime." Elias's hands clenched the railing. "Then we have to stop it." Treva shook her head, a slow, deliberate motion. "We cannot. Not without undoing the bond itself, and doing so would destroy him. Or me. Or both." He turned sharply, panic rising. "Then what do we do? Are we supposed to just watch the universe bend itself apart because we can't control it?" She reached out, her hand brushing his. The moment contact was made, the ship shivered as if acknowledging the truth in her words. "We adapt. We endure. And we guide it. Together." A warning alarm blared as the outer hull sensors detected a massive energy surge. The plasma storms of Aurelian Prime had intensified, feeding into the resonance field like tributaries into a river, amplifying its reach. The stars outside twisted and folded in impossible geometries, and Elias felt the tug of entire planets, faintly, against their combined gravity. He could sense lifeforms in nearby systems stirring uneasily, their perception brushing against something beyond comprehension. "Treva," he said, voice taut, "this is no longer just about us. This is the cosmos responding," she finished, her eyes reflecting nebulae and the shimmer of distant galaxies. "We are the pulse. Every heartbeat, every breath, every thought, contributes to it. And it is awakening others. Forces older than our empires, forces that remember resonance as the language of creation." Before he could reply, the ship convulsed. The hum surged into a roar, metal groaning under the strain. Consoles flickered, displays dissolving into fractal patterns of light. Crew members screamed as the ship lurched, some thrown into zero gravity in sudden bursts. Elias barely held onto the rail, feeling Treva's presence anchor him as reality itself seemed to fold around their combined influence. Outside, the fleets of both the Kelry Dominion and the Human Federation were caught in the field. Entire ships bent, their hulls twisted by invisible currents, sensors unable to reconcile the distortions. A cruiser drifted into a plasma ribbon, reappearing seconds later shattered, then reforming in a brief echo of light. The resonance was rewriting the rules of physics in real time. Treva's voice reached him, calm despite the chaos. "We cannot think as mortals. We must think as the field itself does. You must let go, Elias. Trust me, and trust yourself." He hesitated, heart hammering, mind screaming against instinct. Then he felt it, the inevitability, the flow of energy coursing through them. He released his grip on fear, aligning his consciousness with hers, with the hum, with the very lattice of space that vibrated to their rhythm. A pulse surged from them, radiating outward in a wave that bent starlight, reshaped matter, and resonated with life in ways they could not begin to understand. The universe responded. Planets tilted, asteroid belts shimmered in newly drawn orbits, and distant stars flickered as if acknowledging their presence. Time itself quivered in the field's wake, creating brief echoes of what had been and what might yet come. Elias realized that their bond was no longer just personal, it had become a cosmic event. "We are beyond empires now," Treva whispered, her hand finding his once more. "Beyond law, beyond control. Whatever we are, it is bigger than either of us." He looked into her eyes, seeing centuries of experience, of loneliness, of power restrained and now unleashed. Then we don't fight it, he said. We embrace it. A final pulse surged outward, enveloping the Eclipsora and radiating across the sector. Ships were thrown off course, storms bent toward new patterns, and the very void shimmered with light as if the universe had exhaled. Elias could feel Treva's heartbeat sync perfectly with his own, their bond now fully entwined, inseparable, unstoppable. And as the echoes of their resonance spread outward, a single thought crystallized in his mind: they had crossed a threshold from which there was no return. Everything they had known, every star, every law, every empire, was now part of their shared gravity. Treva's voice, soft and certain, vibrated through him. The cosmos is ours to fall into. He smiled, letting go entirely, and felt the universe itself pulse in response. The universe was quiet now, but not empty. The echoes of the resonance still rippled through space, faint yet persistent, like the afterimage of a star that had burned too brightly to be forgotten. Elias floated in the Eclipsora's bridge, staring out at the transformed constellations. Lines of energy stretched across the void, arcs of light that no astronomer had charted before, galaxies bending subtly toward one another in recognition of something alive, something aware. Treva hovered beside him, her presence no longer merely physical but a pervasive vibration that threaded through the ship itself, through him, through everything he could sense. The remnants of the fleets that had once pursued them drifted aimlessly, harmless, like flotsam caught in a tidal current too vast to resist. Where once tension had roared with threat and violence, now there was a fragile equilibrium, a balance forged not by treaties or armadas, but by something far older, the force of connection, of shared consciousness amplified across the void. Elias reached out, letting his hand hover just above hers. The faint warmth of light beneath her skin pulsed in time with his heartbeat. "It's over," he said, though even as he spoke, he understood that "over" was a human concept, inadequate for this scale. "Not over," Treva said softly, her eyes reflecting the swirling cosmos outside. "Changed. Transcended." He nodded slowly, absorbing the truth in her words. The conclave, the Federation, the empires and armies, they were all ghosts in this new reality. Nothing had truly died, yet everything had shifted. Time and space were no longer entirely linear. The universe itself now acknowledged the pulse of their bond, the weight of their combined resonance. "Do we go back?" he asked. She shook her head, though the motion was gentle, almost sorrowful. "There is no back. Only forward. Forward into what we have created, into what we must become." He swallowed, looking around at the control panels, the bridge, the instruments that still blinked and whirred, now barely necessary. The Eclipsora was no longer just a ship, it had become an extension of their bond, a vessel that moved through the field of existence rather than merely through space. The hum of resonance filled the bridge, subtle now, a soft cadence that seemed to pulse through the atoms around them. It was not threatening, not chaotic, rather, it was steady, a heartbeat aligned with the rhythm of the universe. Elias felt it in every fiber of his being, a comfort and a warning at once. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Treva considered him, her expression unreadable for a long moment, and then she smiled. "No. Every choice we made, every risk, every spark of fear and longing, it led to this. I do not regret it. We are the culmination of centuries of longing, of ambition, of hope." He reached for her hand, and this time, the contact was not fleeting. The light that flowed from her skin braided with his own, sending shivers through both of them. Around them, the ship's systems adapted to the resonance rather than resisting it. Screens, consoles, and instruments aligned to their pulses, responding to intention rather than command. The ship became a single conscious entity, aware, alive, bound to them and them alone. Elias let his mind expand, testing the edges of what he could sense. He felt distant nebulae stirring, heard faint echoes of civilizations far beyond known space, and understood that their bond had become a beacon, a thread that linked life across countless systems. The universe was alive with response, subtle and profound. Trevor's voice broke the silence again. Do you remember what I told you at the chamber? He smiled faintly, a memory of their first flirtation in zero gravity washing over him. Careful. I'm falling for you. Her laughter, soft and eternal, filled his mind. Too late, she replied, as it always had. They moved together through the ship, hands intertwined, hearts synchronized. In the corridors, lights shimmered in hues that matched their emotions, casting dancing patterns across the metal walls. Crew members, wherever they were, found themselves experiencing calm, clarity, even joy, as though the resonance extended to all within proximity. It was not domination, it was harmony, a gentle persuasion of the universe itself toward balance. Outside, stars twisted into new constellations, forming patterns that no navigator could have charted, yet somehow instinctively recognized. Entire systems hummed in sync with their bond, planets aligning along trajectories that were more than gravitational, they were purposeful, guided by resonance. Elias took a deep breath, letting the vibration flow through him, and whispered, "We changed everything." Trevor's eyes glimmered, reflecting the light of 100 shifting galaxies. Not just everything, she corrected. We became everything. And in becoming, we are free. He looked out at the void, feeling the weight and the promise of what lay ahead. For the first time, he understood the enormity of their existence. They were not rulers, not conquerors. They were catalysts of evolution, forces that shaped the cosmos through connection rather than destruction. And somewhere, in the distant reaches of space, a young explorer would one day look up at the auroras that danced across a small, reborn world and feel, without understanding why, the gentle tug of two hearts that had rewritten the universe. The pulse of their resonance would linger across time, a quiet echo of love, unity, and boundless possibility. Elias turned to Treva, the two of them weightless in the bridge that had become both vessel and sanctuary. "Shall we?" he asked, a tentative smile on his lips. She nodded, her radiant form brushing against his. "Shall we?" she echoed, and together they drifted forward, into a universe remade, into a future that was no longer written, but lived. The stars bent slightly in acknowledgement, the void rippled softly, and the resonance of two souls became the heartbeat of all that existed. The cosmos had listened, and the cosmos had answered. For them, there was only the infinite, and the certainty that wherever they fell, they would fall together.